Welcome to an updated team selection video and preview ahead of Game Week 19. 2 more games have been postponed and there could be several more, and it looks like the free hit chip could actually be activated sooner than expected. A lot of us were maybe thinking of using it around Game Week 22 or a bit later, but this might be the time to use the free hit. I'm going to be talking about the extra free hit they have given us and also everything that's going to happen potentially in Game Week 22, and also a broad overview of the chips and when we could be using them. So let's get straight into the video. Looking at my own team, and I'll try to keep this brief and to the point. As you can see, a triple up with Liverpool has cost me a bit because now I'm struggling to field an 11. So Jota, Salah, Arnold, Dennis, all will blank because Wolves versus Watford and Liverpool against Leeds are both postponed. That was confirmed this morning and we have to deal with this, and I think the free hit could be a very good opportunity for that, and if not, this could actually be the time to get rid of Salah. I'll be talking about that in my transfer plans very soon, but I've already talked about my team. I was actually very confident heading into this game week, especially with triple Liverpool, but now that source of strength has become a weakness and I have to deal with it accordingly. So yeah, this might be the time to get rid of Salah, maybe look for Heung-min Son, Cristiano Ronaldo, but if you do go for Ronaldo, you might have to make several changes and that could incur a -4, a -8 hit, and I know a lot of people will be doing that. I also only have one free transfer and 1 million in the bank, but I think the plan will be to only use one free transfer and then try to save and roll over. But right now, it's just looking really difficult to actually roll over the transfer and have 2 free transfers. That's kind of a luxury at the moment, but yeah, that's unfortunately the way it is. If Chelsea versus Villa and maybe another game is postponed also, then I think the free hit will just be a no-brainer because I'm already struggling to field an 11 and I'm happy with the team overall, but with these postponements, I need to act. And yeah, there's just nothing more I can do really. I think the free hit, actually, I'm getting more likely to just trigger the button and we'll have another one. I'll be expecting the free hit as well very soon. But yeah, in terms of my own team selection, it's going to be probably one free transfer, if not maybe a -4 to bring in Cristiano Ronaldo. A simple move would be to get rid of Mohamed Salah for Heung-min Son, and of course that's just one free transfer and that's it. But I'm still not entirely sure about that, and if I do make that transfer and then other postponements happen, then I would just most likely be freeing anyways. But the other possibility would be to get Cristiano Ronaldo up front. The problem is, Lacazette, who's my most expensive striker, if I were to go for him and I also want Heung-min Son, then I would also have to make yet another transfer, and that would mean I would also waste a -8 hit. And then you could just say, well, instead of Son, just go for a cheaper midfielder. And I could do that. I could go for a Jared Bowen or someone else from a game that isn't going to be postponed. But at the same time, I do want Heung-min Son. But obviously you can't have everyone, that's the thing. But the fact that I'm only just 0.6 million off from having Heung-min Son and Cristiano Ronaldo, I think it just makes sense to have both of them in. And the reason why I'm talking about getting rid of Salah actually is because he's blanking now against Leeds. And then you look at the fixtures afterwards, he's got Leicester and then Chelsea away. And then the 2 games after that, he's going to blank, he's not going to play because of the African Cup of Nations. So I think now is actually a good time to get rid of Salah potentially. And who would have thought anyone would be saying this by this stage of the season? If it wasn't for African Cup of Nations, then definitely not, you'd still be keeping him. But the fact that he's got 2 difficult fixtures after a blank, and then he's going to miss 2 games at least because of a competition like the African Cup of Nations, I think Salah, with that money as well, you can just go to Son, Ronaldo, and so many possibilities open up for you. And it does open up the game and make it a bit more interesting to a certain degree. But that's what I'm thinking of at the moment. And I think Son in for Salah is probably the best course of action for my team. For you, it might be getting in Ronaldo, especially if you already have Heung-min Son. But yeah, I think Son is probably the best course of action. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. But those are my updated transfer plans. Remember, the original idea was to roll the transfer and have 2 heading into Game Week 20 because I thought it could be pretty useful, and I could also build for the double game weeks, and that's also another advantage of having any Spurs or United assets because of the doubles in 22. I'll be talking about that also later in this video. Now, where things get a little bit complicated is that Mikel Antonio actually tested positive for COVID-19, but I think that the actual positive test result came over a week ago. And if you look at the time that the West Ham game will be played against Southampton, he actually could make that game. And David Moyes even said, I'm not sure, to be honest. We're hoping that he can make it. He's double vaccinated, all of that. And he could actually be ready for Game Week 19. But that's not literally something we can rely on. And then you have all these players that are missing out from Liverpool, Wolves, Watford, etc. So we're going to be down to the bare bones, and we're going to need everyone to be available if possible. But yeah, that's going to also be another question mark and another factor to consider in terms of, are we going to free hit now? Are we going to save it? Are we just going to use maybe a -4, -8, maybe a free transfer or whatever? But I just don't really see many people rolling the transfer this week unless you just don't really have that many Liverpool players, and then you're in a good position. But that postponement just shows you, and it's not really, I'd say, bad team planning, but it's really important to try to avoid triple ups, and that's why I'm not happy to have two of them with Liverpool and Man City, because that could happen to any of them. I would rather have one or two players from different teams, and that gives you more flexibility and also more opportunities to maybe go off certain players and try to reduce the number of hits despite the number of postponements going on. So FPL are giving us an extra free hit, and this is going to help us with preparations for maybe Game Week 22, or just it could be any blanks or doubles in the future. We could also use it now, especially if there are further postponements, which to be honest is looking likely. It always is at this moment in time. But just to give a brief summary, if you go on the FPL website, they do give you a nice little overview of what the free hit chip is for any of you who are new to the game, and also why they're doing it. So managers in Fantasy Premier League have had to deal with a lot of uncertainty recently with the unprecedented number of postponed Premier League fixtures affecting their plans. So all FPL managers will now receive one extra free hit chip from Game Week 20 to allow significant changes to squads for a single game week without suffering a points hit. And what is a free hit chip? A free hit allows for unlimited transfers in a single game week. Managers can replace the entire squad out for that game week before the deadline, but their 15-man lineup is returned to how it was at the start of the game week for the next deadline, so before you activated the free hit. If the free hit chip is played leading up to Game Week 20, for example, once the deadline has passed, you will see the points scored by your new free hit squad in the points tab, but in your My Team and Transfers tab, your old Game Week 19 squad will have returned. Like the Wildcard, the free hit is used when confirming transfers. It cannot be cancelled once confirmed, unlike the bench boost and also the triple captaincy, which can be cancelled. And then you have, traditionally, there is one free hit chip to play each season, but the number of postponements have meant that we have introduced a second to give managers more flexibility when making their all-important squad selections, either in the short term or in a future game week. Please note that if you have two free hit chips, you will be unable to play them in consecutive game weeks. Now that is key. After playing your free hit, your squad will return to its previous state for the following game week. So for example, if you use your first free hit chip in Game Week 20, then you can't use your second one until Game Week 22. But ultimately, you try not to do that if possible. You'd want to spread it out. Maybe use one around this period from Game Weeks 20 to 22, and then use the other one later on for another double or blank. There's going to be plenty of that, and once again, I'll be talking about that fairly soon. You don't have to use your free hit over the festive period. You can save it for later in the season when there are more likely to be double game weeks in which the postponed fixtures are scheduled. So that's a bit different to the wildcard, where you have one wildcard for the first half of the season up until Game Week 20 and that deadline, and then after that deadline passes, so from 21 onwards, you can use your second wildcard. But once again, you'd want to also balance that out and maybe use the second wildcard quite late on in this season. And you can also use that second wildcard in conjunction with a bench boost or something else in order to maximize your points, but you don't always have to. There are different ways to maybe navigate through all of these blanks and doubles, and we're going to be talking about that fairly soon. But now let's show you a free hit team for Game Week 19, and if I do decide to actually play the chip, this is going to be very similar to what I'm going to have in the end. At the time of recording, this is what I'd come up with, and there are a few triple ups. I do say that, try to avoid triple ups, but that's mainly with your normal team. With a free hit, I would still go for this, but under the assumption that all of these games go ahead. Remember, Wolves versus Watford is not going ahead, and same with Liverpool versus Leeds. Do not be surprised if there are further postponements, and if there are, you also have to adapt to those accordingly. In goal, it's always pretty much the same thing. I've got Aaron Ramsdale in there. You could argue, you know what? Normally with a free hit, you just focus on the normal 11, but with the circumstances right now, try to also bolster your bench, so even have a second goalkeeper. So if you have enough money, you can also go for a second goalkeeper, but really, in normal cases, we're just going to have Ramsdale in here, and I think that's probably one of the best goalkeeper choices this week regardless. Then we have these defenders now. This is a lot of squad depth. We've got Reguilon, James, Dalot, Cancelo and Lamptey. So not having Trent in here seems very strange, but the game is postponed, and it also gives us so much money to invest across our defence. Reguilon has a very good fixture against Palace. It is still quite difficult. It is a London derby, and Palace did beat them quite comprehensively early in the season, but Spurs are much better now. I wouldn't be surprised if they were able to keep Palace out. And then you have Reece James. You know what? You could arguably, go without him this week. I think against Villa, it's quite a tough fixture. The game might not even go ahead anyway because there's a lot of cases for both teams. And also, Chelsea are in pretty poor form. So Reece James is, one of those players that he can do so well. He's so explosive. But at the same time, I don't think you necessarily need him. Diego Dallo is in there. I think one kind of maybe major absentee in the defence is Kieran Tierney, but if you already have Ramsdale, I don't think that's a huge miss, and you can also kind of cover different teams like Brighton, United and Spurs instead. But I think Tierney's also maybe one of the main ones who could do very well this week, who isn't featuring right now. You can always replace one of these players if you have enough money too, and if not, you can just get rid of Reguilon instead and get Tierney and double up on Arsenal defence. Then we've got João Cancelo. I think he's a no-brainer this week. I know the fixture is tough on paper, but I think City and Cancelo have so many avenues to points, and I just think he's a great option every single week, to be honest, unless he's facing Liverpool away. Then we have Tariq Lamptey at home to Brentford. I think he's a good bench option. I don't know if I'd be starting him. I think if I were to start some of these players, it'd be Cancelo, maybe Reguilon, and possibly Dallo as the free. But to be honest, you wouldn't bench James, would you? So he's in the team. So if you do decide to go free at the back, then I think it'd be James, Reguilon, and Cancelo instead of the others. Then looking at the midfield, Heung-min Son is a no-brainer this week regardless, and I'm looking to bring him in potentially for my normal team. I think he's a fantastic option this week, and to be honest, in the future too. So whether you're free hitting, whether you're making a free transfer, try to look to get Heung-min Son in the coming weeks, unless you go to Ronaldo instead. And then I completely understand that, especially with the doubles coming up for United and also some good fixtures before and after Game Week 22. Then we've got Jarrod Bowen against Southampton. I think that's great cover for West Ham. So even if you go without Mikel Antonio, I think Jarrod Bowen could be great cover. He played up front the other day actually in the Carabao Cup, and I think he's a good option. He's still someone I'm looking at for my normal team as well. And I think, he has kind of dipped recently, but still a really good asset. And on a free hit, I would definitely be looking to target him and that Southampton fixture. Then we've got Martinelli. I think that's just amazing value for money. If he can continue those amazing runs, stay injury free, I think he could actually go crazy against Norwich too. I don't think the ceiling might be as high as it was against Leeds, who were very depleted. Norwich, I don't think are as severely affected as Leeds, but yet again, that's another club that have been seriously struck by COVID as well. So we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But in terms of injuries and available players, I don't think Norwich are as bad as Leeds, and I think they'll put up more of a fight than Leeds did against Arsenal. But Martinelli is a very good choice regardless. And to be honest, looking at this team, what I'd probably be looking to do is do a 3-5-2, play all of the midfielders, those three defenders I said, and then Harry Kane and Ronaldo up front. We also have Mason Mount, who actually scored against Villa last season, I think in the last match of the season, and I think he's a good option as well. And it is a bit of a difficult fixture on paper, but we've got limited options, and I also think around his price, he is one of the best this week, and to be honest, in general. The only problem with Mason Mount, if you're looking to bring him in for your normal team, is the blanks coming up in 24 and 25, and some difficult fixtures before that. And then we've got Phil Foden. Now, this is where it's a bit of a question mark, because he might still be benched because of disciplinary issues outside the field. And if that's the case, then you could just go for Bernardo Silva or Gundogan or maybe another City asset instead. But if Foden does start, I would love to have him in the team, and I think he's a great asset. But once again, it's a question mark. It's another problem. And if you want to kind of avoid the risk, then maybe go for Bernardo Silva instead, despite the fact that he is playing deeper. And then looking at the two strikers, Harry Kane and Ronaldo. Premium strikers just haven't been doing it this year, but Kane has just scored, Ronaldo's been showing some decent form, and they've got some very good fixtures, and Kane, for example, loves playing against the Eagles, so I think both of them are very good choices this week. Then you look at maybe Lacazette, he's not a bad option either, but I would prefer Martinelli, Saka, and a few others instead of Lacazette. Then you look at Jimenez, for example, he's blanking Dennis, and many, many more. Antonio, as I talked about earlier, has tested positive for COVID-19. He could actually make it for this game. And if he does, then you could actually argue to go with him instead of Locadia or one of those premium strikers instead. But if you do go for him instead of Locadia, you'd have to downgrade elsewhere. But ultimately, this is my best free hit team as things stand. You could also go for a few others like Antonio and Tierney, and you don't have to go for everything you see here. If you have any suggestions or alternatives, let me know down in the comment section below. Maybe you can find someone better than Mason Mount, for example. And now let's actually look into some of the double and blank game weeks to come and try to plan the season ahead from this point forwards. What we see on screen is Ben Krelin's tweet from the other day, and he posted the possible games in Game Week 22. Some of these may be updated or changed, so check out his webpage and also all of the links and spreadsheets that he has produced. They're all available to the public. And here for Game Week 22, so Arsenal, for example, they could face Tottenham and Chelsea. As you can see, that's not very an appealing set of Game Week 22 fixtures, so that's probably one of the teams you'd want to avoid when trying to target those teams with a double game week potentially. Then you look at Aston Villa, Man United and Burnley, not too bad on the whole. Then you have Brentford, who could have Liverpool plus Man United or Southampton, so that will be a bit of an interesting one as well. And by the way, with Game Week 21, which I also talked about a few days ago as being a potential double game week, it's not looking as likely now because the Carabao Cup semi-finals are not going to be one-legged and instead it's going to be two legs, so that kind of reduces the chances of a double game week happening in 21, which would have been kind of a mini version anyway. Game week 22 is always going to be the kind of bigger one, and speaking of other blanks, doubles and all of that, I'll be talking about that also later on, not only for 22 but also later on in the season. Then we have Brighton, they face Crystal Palace plus Tottenham or Chelsea or Man United, and once again none of these are confirmed but they're also very likely to happen. There's a lot of stipulations and some teams can face the same opponent as someone else, but ultimately the Premier League have to allocate certain matches and decide, and that should be confirmed within the next few weeks. But Game Week 22 is very likely to be quite a big double game week. Then Burnley facing Leicester plus Tottenham or Watford or Villa. So as you can see, that can completely change the complexion of certain teams and how good their fixtures look for Game Week 22. Chelsea could face Man City plus Brighton or Arsenal. Now, if it was to be Arsenal, then that would be quite a set of bad fixtures, to be honest. So that's not really a double game week you'd want, if we're being honest. And you could still get rid of the Chelsea assets despite them having a double game week if they were to have Arsenal and Man City. Then you have Crystal Palace facing Brighton and Watford. That's a pretty decent set of fixtures. Nothing amazing, but pretty decent. Then Everton facing Norwich and Leicester. Then you have Leeds facing West Ham, so they're not going to have a double game week potentially. Then you look at Leicester, Burnley plus Tottenham or Everton, Liverpool facing just Brentford. And remember, for those of you who have Salah, he's going to be blanking probably this game week because of the African Cup of Nations anyway. So after Game Week 21, after that Chelsea game, Salah, Mane, Keita and a few others from Liverpool, they will be going off to the African Cup of Nations. Then you look across the board. So bear that in mind with any African players you do have, because it will be very crucial in planning around this stage of the season. Then Man City just faced Chelsea. Once again, I mean, do you really want to get rid of Joao Cancelo? Probably not. But if you do have a triple or double up in City, they only have one game in Game Week 22. But yeah, the fixtures before and after that are very good. But yeah, Game Week 22 looks pretty poor for Chelsea and Man City. And yeah, it's quite surprising, but there you go. Man United face Aston Villa plus Brentford or Brighton potentially. That is also pretty decent, to be fair. Newcastle just facing Watford. You know what? I don't think any of us will be kind of chasing or targeting these Newcastle assets unless you're kind of, going against them and targeting the teams facing Newcastle. Norwich facing Everton plus West Ham. Southampton facing Wolves plus Brentford. Tottenham facing Arsenal plus Burnley, Brighton or Leicester. Then you have Watford facing Newcastle plus Burnley or Crystal Palace. West Ham facing Leeds and Norwich. That would actually be a decent set of fixtures, to be honest. Very good. Probably one of the better looking sets of double game weeks there in 22. And Wolves just facing Southampton. So as you can see here, 3 teams in Leeds, Newcastle and Wolves pretty much having just a one game week. Also Man City and Liverpool. The rest will be having multiple game weeks potential, or should I say double game weeks, so we don't want to complicate that even further than what it is. But yeah, there's going to be more double game weeks to come. There's going to be so many different games to be postponed and to be rearranged, like for example the ones from today, Wolves versus Watford and Liverpool versus Leeds. It's going to be very important for the Premier League to allocate them properly. But there you go. That's an overview of the Game Week 22 fixtures, and you can always just pause the frame and then see the fixtures for yourself, or go to Ben Krellin and you have all the latest information there. But now let's actually talk about chip strategies and what we can do to best navigate the blanks and doubles this year. Once again, we have the ever-reliable Ben Krellin to rely on, and he says the big blank and double game weeks this season are Double Game Week 22, Blank Game Week 30, which tends to be a blank to be fair, Double Game Week 36, Game week 21 could still become a double game week, but I don't think that's likely, and that's after obviously the Carabao Cup. That's now only going to be 2 legs as normal instead of the 1 leg, which would have increased the chances of certain games going into game week 21 and forming a mini double game week. Game week 33 could also be a fairly big double game week. There will also be a few mini blank game weeks and mini double game weeks. And to be honest, with the more postponements, there's going to be even more of these mini blanks and doubles to come. So, you know, we just have to prepare for that accordingly. But yeah, it's just going to probably get even worse from this stage onwards. And then he says, a big blank game week is when there are less than 8 fixtures. A big double game week is when there are more than 12 fixtures, just for any of you who maybe aren't used to the terminology. Game week 37 could also become a fairly big double game week. There are 3 midweeks at the end of the season in game weeks 33, 36 and 37. Postponements caused by the FA Cup semi-finals, game week 33, should move to the midweek in game week 33. Postponements caused by the FA Cup final, which is in game week 37, should move to the midweek in game week 37. So just kind of a clear idea of how the FA Cup and those blanks could still be rearranged within the same game week. Then he also says if you have all of your chips apart from your first wildcard, which I think a lot of us are in the same boat there, then he thinks the obvious chip strategy is the first free hit in double game week 22, the second free hit in blank game week 30, the second wildcard before game week 36 to set up a bench boost team, bench boost in double game week 36, and then triple captain in another double game week. And the thing with the triple captaincy, you could also triple captain when a certain player like Salah has a very enticing fixture. It could just be the one, to be fair. It doesn't have to be a double, but you could also target these mini double game weeks instead of the major ones where you probably want to use your bench boost and other chips like that. Maybe use the second wildcard into the bench boost. As Ben Crellin says, another possibility to what he says now, with all the news now coming today, is potentially using the first free hit in game week 19 right now to navigate all these blanks, especially if you already have triple Liverpool, maybe you have Rafinha, Dennis and a few others, maybe Wolves assets too. That's where you could use the free hit now instead of taking multiple hits and then you might not like your team going into the future. So that's one thing you could also consider. He also says the game week 30 blanks will be known in game week 28. You can wildcard anytime after then, knowing the teams who blank in game week 30 will have a double game week coming up. Wildcarding after the double game week 36 fixtures are announced is preferable, but you can get to a good bench boost team with free transfers if you wildcard earlier. So that's kind of a nice little overview, and some people will still have the first wildcard available. So let's also talk about what you can do if you still have the first wildcard available and how that could alter your overall chip strategy. In the case of you having the first wildcard still, Ben Crelling also suggests you could wildcard in game week 20 to set your team up for double game week 22 and game week 21 if it becomes a double game week, which to be honest it's not looking likely. Bench boosting double game week 22 and then wildcard shortly after so you aren't carrying an unbalanced squad. Then the best time to play your 2 free hit chips would probably be blank game week 30 and double game week 36. So that's where the kind of whole narrative, the whole situation changes whether you have the first wildcard or not, and that can completely change the whole scope and dynamic of your chip strategy. But that doesn't mean you have to do what Ben Crellin or I suggest. You could also maybe change things up a little bit and do your own way. You could still go for what we talked about earlier if you still have the first wildcard, but you can also maybe make some alterations there too. And to be honest, with all these postponements, maybe it's not looking as needed to use the free hit going into game week 22. You can maybe use it now, like I said before, in game week 19 or at another stage of the season. You can still use it in blank game week 30 or double game week 36 despite not having your first wildcard still. So there's so many different possibilities. I think all of these postponements, even though they are frustrating, they do open up the game a little bit. So this was going to look like maybe a very template-oriented season, but I think different people will be going on different chip strategies, going with different players, different teams, and all of that. And that just opens up the horizon and all the possibilities and makes things a bit more interesting, I think. But thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and subscribe if you're new around here. And all the very best of luck with game week 19. I think we're going to need it. As I talked about earlier, my team is not in as good of a state now as it was before. Unfortunately, it was looking all good, all solid. I was going to roll the transfer. But yeah, the postponements have come and they typically are announced maybe 2 to 3 days before. I mean, they try to leave it as late as possible. So sometimes you find out the day before or even on the same day, like it happened with Villa versus Burnley last game week. But we just have to be prepared for any eventuality. There's still the Antonio COVID situation. Let's wait and see what happens there. And there's so much more to discuss. But here in this video, we talked about my updated team selection, what I'm planning to do, maybe getting Heung-min Son or Cristiano Ronaldo. I could still get both over the coming weeks, which would be definitely ideal. And I think right now, I know it sounds crazy, is the time to get rid of Mohamed Salah, which is just absolutely mind-boggling, to be honest. And you can also join the Discord server. The link is in the description below. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram, Dylan_RCM. Good luck with the rest of the season. We're going to need it as well. But we can plan and be meticulous, and hopefully no more of this kind of random postponements will affect our kind of plans too much, which has been the case all season. Thank you to all the subscribers, all the channel members. We're trying to get to 9,000 subscribers, so it'd be much appreciated. Any sort of support is greatly appreciated as always. You can also join the league, and it's still open for any new members. And let's just enjoy the football over this Christmas period. Enjoy Christmas, have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and I'll see you next time.